Hello, Rob.
Ja, zowel ja. 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 So, good morning. How are you? Or good morning. Well, I don't know if it's morning over there.
Yeah, it's lunchtime, around lunchtime.
Oh, okay. Well, then you're about 3 hours ahead.
Yeah. A little more, 5 hours. It's okay.
Or 5 hours even. Okay. So, how are you?
Yeah, very good.
Oh, okay, great.
I think I kind of read and investigated like most of the things that there are on the net about you. So kind of like I even recently I listened to this latest podcast that you had on living education. So that kind of cut like half of my questions off. So I think it's a good thing. So that don't waste your time like just repeating the same stuff.
Yeah, thanks for preparing.
So I have a big list of questions. I think the first one is kind of like the standards. I know that you said that students are tested when they finish the education, and that's a good thing about this Netherlands education. My question is like, is there like any kind of assessment that the government does of your school? Like, how do they trust you? Like,
yeah. How do they trust you? That's a great question. Well, first of all, in normal Dutch schools, kids get tests on a daily, weekly basis. You know, we don't do that because we are looking for growth. And if you're looking for growth, you see them grow in lots of ways. You don't have to test them; you have to observe them. Of course, the Dutch system tells us that we have to mark certain things in the first 2 or 3 years of education and in the last 2 or 3 years. Those who we have to do in the first 2 or 3 years, they're quite general. Like, for instance, mathematics, they have to know that the Second World War, we have to touch based to the Second World War, you know. But well, we can do that on it can happen in any day start. We can talk about the war or whatever. So then at the end, kids have to do the national exams. So that's a big test, of course, because they have to do 6 up until 10 subjects then. And they have to show that they have all the knowledge that they need to prepare for more than 1 or 2 years. And so that's a big government thing. But that is not the way that their full grade is decided, because we have also what we call school exams, and the government also tells us what we need to test during the school's exams. And I say this wrong, because I say what we need to test, they tell us what we need to grade during the school exams. So it doesn't have to be a test. It could also be that a kid makes a movie about a certain topic and we grade him because of that.
I see.
So these are the 2 ways they look at, do these kids have the basic knowledge that they need to have in the Netherlands? Then, of course, the government also looks to, and how should I say that in English? If our kids progress during the years in a certain amount of speed. So, for instance, if we have a lot of kids who spend 7 years out of our school instead of 6, then the government also sends somebody over, and they're going to investigate why this happens. So we have to explain ourselves if a lot of school kids, for instance, stay 7 instead of 6 years.
You're talking about the secondary school, right?
Secondary, yes, yes. So that's also what the government monitors, if we are getting kids towards the exam in a certain pace. What they also monitor is, because our secondary schools are, to make things easy, there are 3 levels of secondary school. There is this basic level for children who want to become a plumber or a carpenter or administrative assistant. Then we have the higher level. That's for children who want to become school teachers or managers or stuff like that. And then we have the highest level, and that's for children who we prepare for doctoral studies.
Yes.
Primary schools in the Netherlands have to tell us if a kid is on which of these three levels they think the kid is. And we have to make sure that they stay on that level. So if we have a lot of children who go down a level, then also the government pays us a visit and tells us, guys, it's not working correctly. So these are the three basic things how we are monitored by the government. On knowledge, on speed through word system, and on the level. The level. If we keep it on the right level. Yeah.
I see. So you also, I think you mentioned from our, I think a previous talk that you mentioned that in the meetings, like the coaches can sometimes steer the students to cover like certain subjects, right? Like topics. Or so it means that there is still some kind of like a roadmap, right, for them to adhere to.
Yeah, I can go into that. So what we try to do, we think that when children come into secondary education, they need to discover what's around them. And we get children in who are very narrow-minded. Not all of them, but some of them. So they think, for instance, mathematics is great, and or programming stuff is great, and they only want to do that. Well, then we never make them lifelong learners. We don't make them world citizens. We need. So what we try to do then is connect things that aren't in their street, connect that to it. So, for instance, one of the biggest examples is one of the boys from who made our own school a digital learning environment, Egodact. They are on the 100 website as well. He came to this school and said, I only want to do one thing, programming. And then he started, we tried to get him into starting a business. And then he saw that he also needed economics. He needed to have people skills because he was developing into a manager. And by that way, he developed a lot of skills which he never thought were possible. He even got into law. Because when you start a company, you have to know a lot about law and basic. He got connected into the banking world. And so that's what we try to do. When they are quite narrow-minded, we try to widen them. Of course, we also have the other opposites. We have kids who come in here and they want to do everything. But they do it a little bit. They never go in depth. And if you never go in depth, then you never become a researcher. It's always, well, I made this crappy thing out of wood, and for me, it's good enough. Those kids are the also. And with them, we try to get them in depth on something. So we are going to put some boundaries to that, and we're going to tell them, well, okay, you've produced 2 things now, and they were all like a bit crappy, but you said it was fine. The third thing we're going to make has to be an end product. And an end product for somebody else, so you are not going to say, well, it's good enough for me. It has to be a product for somebody else, so they can tell you it's not good enough. Put some extra effort in it.
Kind of like in Scrum, you have to have the product. They have to be deliverable, right, to someone.
Yeah, and that's one of our basic things where we always were looking at when we were developing Agora, agile Scrum techniques, because that's what we do with children. Our challenges with children are sprints within the Scrum system. We make them as small as possible, but a lot of sprints can deliver a big product. So with some children, you need to put in extra, well, not rules, but you have to have an agreement about what is a good end product before they start. And with other kids, you have to tell them it doesn't have to be perfect. Take it easy, So, but are we looking at, so behind the scenes, the coaches, they are talking amongst each other about what is this kid learning at the moment? Is he developing wide enough, or is he developing very narrow? And what can we do about that? That's all behind the scenes. We will never tell a kid, like, these are the end terms for mathematics, and you haven't done this one, that one, that one. We do that when it's really necessary, and that's about 2-3 months before the exam. Then we have to take out that piece of paper and say, have you done? You need to do this, this, and this, and the rest is already done.
So just to clarify, do you just look at the broadness or specificity, kind of thing, or do you have some kind of exact, some certain list of topics that you need to cover?
Yeah. Of course, the government has a list for us because they have these end terms for all the courses, so we can look at that list. But what we see is that a lot of those things on those lists are connected. We all know that a lot of mathematics is also part of economics, is also in biology or in physics. So when kids start a challenge, they are a lot of the time they are touching things from a lot of different courses. And when you realize that, then that's very helpful. But what we try to do in the first couple of years is not look at that list. Because if you look at what we see in practice is that if you look too much at that list, it's going to turn into that old education again. Did I do that with them? Did I do this with them? And then you're going to force children to learn something now, and that will never last up until the exams.
So just to make sure that you said that you hire some teachers who prepare kids for exams, right? When they're closer to the final years, when they when they have to pass the exams. So before that, you don't have any formal classes, right? You try not to have those.
Exactly. What we at the moment in the last 2 years, kids can get help from these exam experts, and they don't. And they have a look at what did you do up until now and what is necessary to do in the last 2 years. Is that going to stay that way? No, we want to change that as well. But we can't develop everything at once. It's just a big way of discovering how is this working and what can we do and developing. So am I or my colleagues happy with what we do in the last 2 years? No, not for the full, not for everything we do. Is it working for now? Yes, it is working, but it's like a bandage. It's not what we want to have as an end result as a school.
I see. So you kind of want to have to minimize the impact of those, of that test preparation, right? Exam preparation.
Yeah. What we try to do, the kids who come into our school, I see them like waves on a beach. The first wave, we have them in the 6th year now, or we had them in the 6th year last year. Well, they were raised with what we know when they were in the 1st year. But the students who are in the 1st year now, we raise them with the knowledge we have now, and with that knowledge is what we learned from these 6 waves in the last 6 years, and we try to progress from there.
So just to confirm, you have 6 years, right? In your
well, that's really annoying in the Dutch system. Those kids who are in those lower level, they are on the lower level because they are skilled workers. They are only 4 years in secondary. Those in that middle level are only 5 years in secondary. And the most knowledgeable kids, we have them 6 years. And in my opinion, it should be the opposite, or everybody 5 or everybody 6. Because those kids who come in here for 4 years, they need the most help. And those very intelligent kids, they hang around for 6 years, waiting up until 18 to go to university.
I see.
I don't like that about the Dutch system.
I see. Rob, and for example, if you were to for example, for the system in other country, for example, when they have more frequent tests, every year or even every term, maybe 4 times a year, would you how would you look at the system that would kind of well, how would you do it? And maybe
very difficult. If in Belgium, for instance, they are obliged to do certain things every year. Well, that makes it harder, of course, because then you are limiting what kids can do in a challenge, because you have to tell them, well, but we need to put this in there. So that makes it a lot harder. Yeah, so that's the only response to this. It makes it harder. It doesn't make it impossible, because everybody knows that it is normal in that country, but it makes it a lot harder, because the flexibility we have with children, we can say, well, he didn't learn it in the first year, but we make sure that he learns it in the second or in the third. And if you don't have that flexibility, you have to say, well, she didn't learn it in the first month, but she's going to learn it in the second or in the seventh month. But so that makes it a lot harder, a lot.
I see.
But I think governments have to government should know that they make it a lot harder. It's not that the children make it a lot harder or the school make it a lot harder. The government makes it a lot harder. And I think the way this goes is that if you as a government have a lot of control about your schools, and you tell them a lot what to do in a certain time, you should also know that you are developing people with robot skills. I spoke to a principal of a school a couple of years ago, and he invited me to have a look at his school, because he said, well, I'm fully into personalized education. And I want my staff to embrace it and work with it, but they are not really doing it. So he asked me to come over, and I spoke to a couple of people in the staff. And when I spoke to them and I saw the kids working, I saw that they were doing a lot of testing. So I asked these staff members, why are you doing a lot of testing? And they said, well, our principal looks to the results of to the average scores of the students every month. And based on that average, he approaches us that we have to improve or not, or that we are doing great. So when I give a test and the kids score low, I give a second test, because I don't want to score low as a person for my principal. So what this principal wasn't realizing was that he was the problem. Why the school wasn't developing and progressing into personalized education. Because the way he approached his staff members, the staff members started to approach the kids in the same way. And that's also on a government level, of course. If they shout out that they want to be into personal education, they have to find a way not to force people into a certain system. Well,
you say one thing, but your actions speak of something else, like speak of...
And of course, it's like, well, in the Netherlands, we would call it the blind spot. You know, it's right in front of you, but you don't see it yourself. And it's quite logical. I have a lot of blind spots as well. When I say a lot in talks like this, and then I walk out the door and I start talking to a kid, and 5 minutes later I realize that I've not totally talking to that kid how I want to do it, you know. So everybody has them, but if you find out that you have one, work on it.
Rob, and for example, like this is about you have a secondary, right, education, and like how would you do it, like in an elementary school or a middle school or something?
Last year I was invited in Qatar, and in Doha they started with elementary children. They started quite in I would almost say in the same way. They are really inspired by Ken Robertson, who unfortunately died this year. But so I've seen it happening there. They were just looking at what does this kid want to learn now, and how can we commit to that. And of course, they weren't waiting. They weren't putting kids on a chair and started looking at them. Well, let's see what they are going to do. But they were working on collaborative things with them, building things out of toilet paper rolls and cardboard and stuff like that, trying to build a city. And then taking that as a central theme, and then looking how are these children responding to that. Okay, so this kid wants to do this, and this kid wants to learn that. Okay, we go with that. And if you do that, these kids learn faster. So it's like I give a lot in a lot of my talks. I give the example of my daughter riding her bike.
Yeah, I watched that.
Yeah, well, my daughter wanted to ride a bike when she was 3 years old, but I also knew children who want to learn to ice skate when they are 3 years old. It doesn't matter what it is, just help them to learn it, because then they become happy learners and want to learn more. And then the ice skater wants to learn to ride a bike, and the biker wants to learn to ice skate. Well, if you can put that principle into education, you're there, I think.
Do you have Montessori schools in Netherlands?
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Is it like similar to that kind of approach, or?
Well, I think it's maybe strange to say that, but I think that I don't know the Montessori education good enough to say something about that. I know it's different, and that I have a very logical explanation for that, because there is a Montessori school in Nijmegen, that's a city in the Netherlands, and they have an Agora department. So they know it's different.
Okay.
But don't ask me on where the difference is. I don't.
Can you say again the name of that school?
It's the Montessori school in Nijmegen. I can send you a link.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe that school in Qatar that you visited.
Oh yeah. Well, I have to look that up.
Okay.
I can't pop that question right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that school in Qatar, it's from the Qatar Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Okay,
there is this. Well, there are videos online with me and people from Qatar, and they are the ones who also do that school.
Yeah. Okay. Also, I wanted to know about maybe like the costs and the budget of your school, like.
Yeah. Yeah, I can go into that. Well, we are a public school in the Netherlands, so we have the same budget as every other public school. That means that with a normal kid, you get about, in the Netherlands, you get about 7,500 euros on a yearly basis. And we have to pay everything out of that. So we have to pay the teachers, the building, the whole shebang. So that's the same money as every other school in the Netherlands gets as well. Well, then I have to go in. The two questions will always follow after this question is, how do you get coach groups of below 18, and how do you get that building? Those are most of the times the two questions. Well, the building is quite easy. There are a lot of things in the building that look great, but are made with children or are second-hand and then refurbished with children. We don't spend a lot of money on teaching materials. We don't buy every student 20 books for a school year. We don't do that. So that saves us a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then if we can put that money into working material to use in our workshop and stuff like that. But what do we make there? Well, we make the projects of the children there, but we also make parts of the building there. So that material is...
kind of build your school, right?
Yeah, we build our school with the same material. So we don't spend that money twice. In any other school, they spend money on books, they spend money on woodworking things for in the carpentry shop, and they spend money on the building. But we take this money almost together and spend it once on children who make something for the building. And then on the other side, we have coach groups between 15 and 18 students per teacher. In any other school in the Netherlands, a typical Dutch teacher has to spend like 25, 26 full hours giving lectures to children. That's in normally Dutch school. Well, we don't lecture. So that's the first thing. Then we put these coaching groups, we combine them with 4 or 5 in a team. if you put 4 or 5 of these children in a team, then one of these coaches can be outside the room on a daily basis. But with the 4 of them, they have not 18 children, but more, because that one coach that is outside the building, these kids are still there, but they know what to do, so they just progress. So you can't compare a classroom in a regular school where you have like 25 or 30 children with what we do with that number 18, because we also have coaches who aren't in the building, but the coach group is still here. And nobody personally is watching them. They are just in the same room as all the other kids. So that makes the comparison with other schools quite difficult. And that's why I hear a lot of people online calling out and saying, well, that must cost a lot, Agora, to keep those numbers down. But that's not the main reason. And there is also a second reason. In a lot of schools, I see a lot of overhead. People who aren't educating, who don't have first contact with the students. We are trying to decrease that and put it back to a minimum. So I'm still in a building that we are sharing with another school, so that's why we still have a little bit of overhead. But if this was only an Agora school, just Agora, then I would have one person on administration level picking up the phone, but children can do that as well. I wouldn't have a janitor. I wouldn't have that, because we have all the workspaces. Children and our people who the staff in the workspaces can do that together. And if you take all these people out of the equation, you get a lot of money to spend on our coaches and the people who really talk to children.
Wow. So how much, my first question is, you said that you mentioned that teachers are out of school. Is it to give them like one day off, like kind of to explore?
And they're not necessarily out of school, because the team that I was describing, those 5 coaches, well, if you have 280 students, we have 5 teams. So they can also be learning in another team, observing their co-workers in another team. What are you doing? How are you doing that? Hey, I'm going to do that as well. You know? So,
But is it voluntarily, or do you like encourage them to like go and learn?
It's a great question, because we are saying this since we started Agora. You should be not coaching, not caring for children for 1 day a week. And that's the most difficult job they have. That's the most difficult part, because they are that connected to the kids that they want to stay in there. So yes, on a regular basis, I have to talk to my staff about, get out there. I'm going to kick your butt if you come tomorrow to school, you know.
But what do you want them to do? Like,
what we hope that they do is widen their point of view, widen their mindset. Get out there, tell us what you've seen. How can we benefit as a school out of that? I want them to visit other schools. I want them to visit companies. I want them to go to the museum. I even want them to go to the museum, because if my coworkers do that, they get this connection with the outside world. And if they have that connection, they will learn our students also to get that connection. And they will have the faith that they can send students out there, because they know the people where they're coming from. And it's, of course, also a big learning. Go visit your coworkers, learn from them, observe them, give them feedback.
Kind of go beyond their comfort zone, right? Kind of like become more interesting people, just like, have a wider perspective. I get it.
You know, we are responsible for turning kids into lifelong learners. If the people who are responsible for that aren't lifelong learners, then we are in trouble, are we?
Exactly. So and also just a little bit more about your costs. Like, for example, like maybe in some like private schools, they spend money on like extracurricular stuff, just like some, maybe, I don't know, some kung fu or some like badminton, like tennis, I don't know.
Well, to get into that, all the kids who come to Agora get a Chromebook. We pay for that. And that's the only thing we give them. And they can use all the materials in our workshops, of course. If they need to go somewhere, a lot of the times we also pay train tickets and stuff like that. We all do that from the regular Dutch budget. And we can do that because we don't buy all these books. That's quite easy. An average school in the Netherlands spends €300 on a yearly basis on books per student.
Per student, yeah.
Yeah, well, we spent that on that one Chromebook. So, and all the rest of the years we can spend it on all the things I just said. Then you are talking about extra curriculum. Yes, we have some extras. So, for instance, we have a skiing trip. If we do things like this, we as schools ask parents to put money in, and then we have it. If, for instance, if they go on a skiing trip for 4 days, then the parents chip in for like 100 or 150 euros, or maybe 200. But we also know that certain parents can't pay that money. And if these kids want to go, we make sure that we pay for it, or we get the government to pay for it. Then on extracurricular things, like you were saying, Kung Fu and stuff like that, I think a lot of schools don't realize that they have a great network. And I always tell it, but I tell it, it's a joke, of course, but there is one benefit in all these parents who are separating and remarrying and stuff like that. Because the average kid at the moment has 3 parents. And these 3 parents all have knowledge, all have hobbies, and all have jobs. And we make a big effort to know what these skills of these parents are. And we invite them in the school. So I get parents over here who come and give karate lessons for free. We already done that. We have parents over here who come and give dancing lessons for free. We have parents here to educate children on mental health care or whatever their profession is.
So that kind of fills the gap of the extracurricular stuff, right?
Yeah, that can fill the gap easily. But you have to make an effort. And what I see at Agora at the moment is that we benefit of that, and then it rises, and then we as Agora, because we are developing, are focusing a little bit on something else, and then it decreases again. And what we are doing at the moment after 5-6 years is trying to stabilize it,
I see.
Yeah, but
it depends on how much effort you put in this.
Yeah, well, huge. I have 2 colleagues. Well, of course, we have these coaches, but we can also make these groups smaller because they do beneficial tasks, which normally a staff member would do. So 2 of my coaches are responsible for what we call the inspirational sessions of parents. And I think they spend like half a day a week on that. Yeah. But what we are doing now, and that's like a new discovery we made, and I have to thank Peter Houben for that. He's from Australia. He's a great guy. You should look him up. That's a great TED Talk. What we are doing at the moment is organizing our school with our students. And we are benefiting from that a lot. And students are benefiting as well. So for instance, I have 2 secretaries at the moment. And one of them is 13-year-old and the other one is 15-year-old. And they manage all the questions that come in with our school email address. They manage all of them. They reply to these people. They put the message forward to somebody else who knows how to respond. Yesterday evening, we had a digital information session for primary students. And these 2 kids, these 2 secondaries, they organized this whole event for 70 people. They even made sure that there were 5 students in there who did lectures for these primary kids.
Wow.
And they also made sure that there were 5 coaches to help and assist the student if that was necessary. So these kids are getting great skills. And they get a lot of ownership of the school. So Peter Houben told me one thing. He said, Rob, you shouldn't hire a grown-up if it's a job that a child can do with a little assistance. And I think he's that on. We don't have to look for, of course, kids should go out there, but there are also a lot of opportunities to discover the world inside our school.
But how is it viewed by the children? Like, are they eager to like kind of involved in that kind of activities, or do they see it as like a chore? Or well, I'm
No, no,
sure
no.
they have a great
But
attitude.
this I have to explain how things like this start. I had the idea to get kids into help. I just went to all the rooms and spoke to these teams with 50, 60 students. I just got into the room, raised my hand, stand on a table, waited till it got silent. And then I said, kids, I have this great idea. I do a lot of communication. Do you want to help me? I'm looking for kids who want to operate a camera. I'm looking for kids who want to make audio. I'm looking for kids who want to answer questions from foreigners. I'm looking for kids who want to answer questions from people from the Netherlands. I need 2 secretaries. I just summed it up. And I said, if you're interested, send me an email. Over 20 kids applied. I have now a crew of 20 kids who are working on Agora communication because they like it. But also, and that's the coolest thing, one of the girls who presented yesterday evening wanted to be in this communication group because she is very shy and she wasn't able to speak in front of a group. She said, I want to be in the communication group because I want to improve my self-esteem and I want to improve my communication. And those are reasons why they get into this group.
And parents fully support that as well?
That's why they chose for Agora. That's why they came here. That's what we get from parents. That's the response we get from a lot of parents. They tell us after a couple of months, I have my kid back again. That's what they tell us. They are enjoying themselves again. I came in this morning at a quarter before 8 o'clock. And Agora students on 9 o'clock, they are in at average. I had to open the school door because there were already kids waiting. You know, so.
Well, yeah.
And what you also need to take in mind, I can talk about this with a lot of self-esteem and I can pop up like a million great stories. But of course, we have our difficulties. Of course, we get into trouble with children. Of course, you know, we get stress as well. But what we see is that we have a lot of happy people who care for each other and help each other. And that is above average when I look at the schools I've been in before and the systems I've been in before. But of course, because we are developing it and we are going out there on terrains that we have never been, we are explorers as well. Well, then you can fall down hard and even fall down with children. And then we ask the parents to come over and we apologize. And we tell those parents that it is our learning curve as well. And then we get a lot of respect and most of the times help. And that's a great thing when you step out and when you are open about your failures to parents and tell them that it's your learning curve as well. Then they say, how can I help you? How can I assist?
Yeah, I was impressed by that in your latest podcast when you said that when you talk about your mistakes, it's really it's changing the culture, changing the attitude. I'm impressed a lot.
It's the same as I was talking about that principle a couple of minutes or 10 minutes before. If I don't speak about my mistakes and failures and ups and downs, why should a child trust me to speak about their failures and ups and downs? Why should they do that? And if we address them, we are telling kids that they don't have to have failure anxiety. But that's just, it's part of the process to fall down.
I recently finished the book Creativity about Pixar. Have you read that?
No, I haven't read it. No.
It's amazing because the Ed Catmull, the author, he says a lot that in order to be so creative and be so successful, you have to have difficulties. Like we face a lot of difficulties. It's just a lot of unexpected, because if you don't go there, like go into unknown and try and make mistakes, you won't be like successful in creating new stuff. Like,
well,
what you say is like exactly exactly the same thing. Like you cannot not have struggle and difficulties without like
These,
creating.
if you compare the amount of knowledge that these kids can look up and find just because of this device,
Yeah.
and if you compare that with what my granddaddy could do in 100 years ago, these kids have to manage all of this. How can they manage that? They have to be creative. They have to feel. They have to fall and fail and get out there. And this is increasing. It's not decreasing, it's increasing. So we have to raise them for that. And that means that everybody should know that he doesn't know everything, and that that's normal, and that you have to put effort in, and etc. etc.
Yeah. I kind of bringing us back a little bit to that, to finish that topic of costs. Like, just maybe can you like break down a little bit your budget? Like, what's the like 50% is salaries, and like 30% is like materials, and like 20%.
Okay. Well, it's going to be an educated guess.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the numbers.
Yeah, sure.
I don't look at them on a. Well, I try to look at them as less as possible. Let's see. I think I can't even do an educated guess, because I know that the biggest part is, of course, salaries, and then we have, of course, the building, and then the smallest part is of course all the materials and stuff like that. So no, I can't give you even. I can't put. Well, I wasn't prepared for that question, so. But I
probably not for me.
And then I keep the building out of the equation because I don't have these numbers. But the rest of the money, I think we spent like 80% to 90% on staff, and then about 5% on materials for students, something like that. But it's an educated guess.
I see.
Yeah.
So now to shift a little bit about the facilities, I have two questions about the makerspace, like the lab, and about the canteen. So do you have enough space for the, like, do you wish you had more, like?
We have a great building and we have enough space. And if we need more space, that means that we aren't sending the kids out in the world enough.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because I still think that too many kids are in our building. I think that the amount of students who aren't in the perfect place to learn at Agora, it's quite high.
Yeah.
But I have other standards than other schools.
Yeah.
Can you just wait for 1 minute? Because
sure.
Ik ben tot 10 uur, even kijken. Wacht, een momentje. Ja, ik ben tot 10 uur in gesprek. Daarna kom ik je ophalen, ga ik je voorstellen aan iemand van apart.
Ja.
Goed? Apart. Goed, ben jij gewoon beneden in het lokaal? Ja. Yeah, what were we talking about? Oh yeah. So I believe that, well, what we as schools, we have an assignment, and that assignment is that we should help learners, and we should give them guidance. In that assignment, in the Netherlands, it doesn't say that we have to lock them up in a small room with 30 people and stay in there for 6 hours and do this, do that, do this, do that. We are responsible for the progress of children. Well, I think COVID had a positive thing, because it proved that a lot of children can progress without the teacher standing next to them. That's the first benefit of COVID. Of course, it wasn't working for all the students, but it was working for a group of the students. What I learned from that is that if a child has a certain assignment, of wants to work on a certain assignment, because that's the first thing, wants to work on a certain assignment, we should find the best place to do that. And that's not necessarily in a school. If you want to learn more about running a bakery or being a baker, you should be in the bakery.
Yeah.
And come back to the school and tell us what you learned. If you want to study hard for a test or for an exam, you shouldn't be, a lot of kids need a clean environment where they can be alone.
Yeah.
We should learn them how to do that at home, because
Mm.
that's what they have to do it for the rest of their lives. Or we
Yeah.
should learn them how you could use the local library for that, because
Mm.
that is also a place where they can do it the rest for their lives.
You kind of have to prepare them to live without a school, right?
Yes, we have to learn them to live without a school, because they're going to do that for like 80 years.
Yeah.
So we really should ask ourselves the questions: what is the thing that I need to get them into school? And prepare them to learn at a library. If a kid needs parents for that, that's a good reason to come to school.
Yeah, yeah.
But the purpose should be, okay, I'm going to prepare him to study in the library, or I'm going to prepare him to study at home. Of course, we have a kitchen here, so they can bake bread here. But what my purpose should be is that this kid has a little bit of experience in the bread baking before I send him to the baker. So,
Yeah,
and why do I need to do that? Because this kid can ask the right questions then. So the purpose of the school should be then, I learn this kid what are the right questions to ask a baker. That shouldn't be, how is it to be a baker? Because they already experienced that at the school. If you have a little bit of experience in the school, then you can ask the baker in-depth questions about bakery when you are there.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, that's the role of the school. And if we can become better at that, we don't need to grow our building if our amount of students grows.
Yeah.
So it would be, well, if within 2 years you see that I've made a bigger building here or whatever, confront me and tell me that, Rob, you are not working towards your vision.
I'll send you a link to this video.
Yeah.
So, and about your canteen, like, how is eating organized? Like, do they pay for food or?
No. Well, I know that certain countries they have to feed the children, and in the Netherlands that's not the case at all. So we don't have to give them meals. In the Netherlands, every child brings their own food for lunch. But we have a canteen where they can buy food for small amount. And we have a kitchen. And at the moment, we are into healthy food. We have transitioned into that like 5 years ago. So you won't find any Coca-Cola, or you won't find any
chocolate bars.
Yeah, or any McDonald's-like food or whatever. And the step we are making last half year is that our children are also preparing stuff for our own canteen.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So and we get more and more children. Also, that's also nice. When they, for instance, want to raise money for something, for the World Nature Fund or whatever. A lot of children use food to collect money for that, because they start food making challenges, prepare a lot of food, and then go to the cafeteria and sell that food they made, and then money they give it on the World Nature Funds or whatever. Well, it's not funds, but I don't know the name, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
So the kitchen is kind of like also tightly integrated with your like system. They also they are cooperative with you on these kind of like initiatives.
Yeah, well, if you decrease the amount of staff members who are not working with students, then you increase in the kitchen students. So we don't have any trouble with the people from the kitchen. We are the people.
Can you repeat that? Because I missed that because of some.
We don't have people who are well, as I told you, at Agora, we don't try to have kitchen staff.
Yeah.
We have people who work with students, and they prepare stuff for the kitchen with students.
I see.
So we don't have any fights with the people from the kitchen.
I see.
Yeah. So, but I must tell you, it's in transition now, because we had some people who prepare, we have one person who still prepares food for the kitchen, but he can't manage on her own. So our chef, who is a teacher as well, prepares also food with the children for the kitchen.
I see.
But of course, I want to progress further, and I like the woman who's working there, but we have to get her in that other role, a role that she's going to do it with children, and
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we're nearing the end. One of my last questions is about the Egodact.
Yeah.
Like, do you think we we need some kind of system like that to implement Agora, like Agora principles?
Well, you need because you want to see how children progress. You have to write that down somewhere. And because we are very technology-minded, we thought the best place to write it down is online, because then everybody can access it and can use it.
Yeah.
And then we started looking at the learning environment, at the digital learning environments that there are in the world at the moment. And most of these systems are teacher-driven. I'm going to tell you what to do as a student, and I'm going to put that in this learning environment so you can find it. Well, if you work the opposite way, then you need another system. We already were into Agile Scrum technique. So then we started looking at companies. What do you use for Agile Scrum? And those systems, they were quite difficult for children and also for us, because they have like a million options. You know, you can have the sprints and put this in there and put that. And that was too difficult just for us to incorporate. And then these 3 kids from Egodact, they came over. So if you put this video online, put a link of their website in there as well, or towards the 100 website. These 3 guys came up to me. One of them said, well, I want to become a programmer. And one of them said, I want to be a graphics designer. And the other one wanted to know Agile Scrum technique. So I challenged them to make this learning environment. And so do you need Egodact to be an Agora? No, but 9 out of 10 Agoras at the moment use Egodact. And I think that's for a reason. You need a system to connect this, and it should be I call it an opposite system of all these other learning environments, you know. And then this one is a really basic one. It's as easy as pie.
What are the main features of it? Like if you were to write like a technical specification for like such product, like what would it be?
I don't think I get your question.
Well, right now, like I don't know many details about just Egodact. I'm just interested, like what it does for like students, teachers.
Well, I can fill in the gaps a little bit. It's like a Kanban board. So with 3 columns: to do, doing, done.
Okay.
The kid can put a card in there. That card is a challenge. If they open up that card, they can put in the name or the subject. They can put in the main reason why they want to start the challenge. They can put in a to-do list about, or this is done. This will be, how we call it. This is done when. That's how we call it. So when is it finished?
Yeah.
Based on those 2 and the planning part, coaches tell them, okay, you can go on with the challenge or not. So all the information, the logging during a challenge also happens on that card. And they put the footprint on that card as well. And they put it into the other columns. Am I working on it, or is it something I want to discover in the future, or is it done? Because of all the different rows that you have in this Kanban board, they can also make big subjects. So for instance, nature or starting a company or whatever. And with that, we get like, if they do like 20 challenges and they put them all in there and make these rows, it's becoming like a personal profile. Because they write everything down there, so you can see, hey, they do a lot of nature challenges. It's maybe that's future for him, you know. So that's one part of Egodact, and we use it ourselves as well. All my people, we sent them out that day, but they have to tell us why they are going there. It's always part of a personal challenge. So my teachers also fill in personal challenges about what they are learning. And we also use Egodact to fill in the challenges and things we have to develop as Agora. We use it for that as well. And the second thing they made is how do you call that? It's what they call the progress monitor, and that's like a rubric about in which you can quite fastly see how somebody is progressing. And if you have a rubric, is that a normal word for you? I don't know if I'm.
I think I heard it in one of your podcasts, but I'm not sure right now.
Yeah, well, it's like a rubric could be about, for instance, well, I'm just gonna put one up in the screen. Oh no, it's in Dutch, so I have to. Well, I'm going to translate for you. So, for instance, that rubric, there are skills that we expect every student to develop on. One of these skills is, for instance, communicating with people from outside. Well, you can have that on a certain level, and we describe these levels. And kids have a slider, and they can put the slider where they think they are. So they don't check a box. No, they say, I'm halfway that box, or almost at the end of that box. And that is a great invention by these kids, because what we saw when we were doing this on paper is that kids always check the box lower than they really were, because they were always like, well, this one I know for certain. And now these kids from Egodact, they invented the slider. Well, the slider in the system, I mean, of course. And now we can see that kids are almost finished with this level. And the cool thing is that these Egodact kids also made it possible to press on the play button. And when you press on the play button, it goes back in time. And you can see how all these sliders, whether they were last January, February, March.
Kind of see the history, right?
Yeah. And the cool thing about that Egodact system is that everybody can use it, and you can put any rubric you think of, you can put it in there. And they made it like as easy as pie to adjust these rubrics. You can have one with 3 squares, or with 5, or with your own information on it.
And who comes up with the rubrics? Like the students themselves?
Well, these rubrics are older. These rubrics are before the time that we talked about developing Agora with students. So these rubrics are still from the time that we as teachers thought that we should make them. But I believe that within a year or something like that, we're gonna get on that point that my coworkers are telling me these rubrics, they should be adjusted. And as soon as they say that, then we get kids into the equation as well and talk to that together with them about it. Yeah. But for the moment, they are sufficient, and we're gonna grow on other stuff.
So do they represent this kind of like a roadmap? Because like everyone like kind of looks at your school and sees like, oh, where's their like curriculum? Where's their like program or roadmap? And is the rubric, do they represent kind of like the...
I think the question that you are asking yourself is a question that we ask ourselves also on a regular basis. And why aren't we answering that question fully? That's the main question, and we are debating about that here as well. We don't answer that question fully because we believe that as soon as we have that totally transparent roadmap, then we start doing everything the same with all the children and in the same moment.
Yeah.
So yes, we have a bit of a backbone, but it shouldn't be too much, because we feel that we get sucked into the regular system again then. And that's very difficult, because we need that backbone. Have faith in what we are doing. But we know if we make it too detailed, that we have a lot of faith, but we don't have a lot of things left of the Agora principles, like give the room to explore. And so this is a really difficult point on which we struggle every week, debate about, and then we make it a little bit so we narrow it down. But I will tell you now, as soon as we have it, that detailed thing, I will never share it with the world. because then somebody comes along, grabs that, sees it as a cooking manual, and starts treating kids like that. And then it doesn't have anything to do with Agora at all.
Because that's kind of was my like inkling as well. Like if you have some kind of like plan, can we see it? Can we use it?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and the answer is no.
You don't want to. You don't want to.
No. What we need to do, and what I do, I have trained staff who all went to Teachers Academy, who all finished Teachers Academy. So they all know what children need to know in the end. I trust in that fact. And do I get nervous about that? Yes, very. But I trust in the fact that that teacher knows what to do with this child because he has the experience. And the coach isn't the only one who is responsible for the child. That's why we have these small teams. So those 4 coaches know all these students in the team. And so they can watch each other's back. Need to watch each other's back. They are quite, and that's also a big thing. These coaches have to have a lot of faith in each other because they have to debate up until the point that they fight each other to help the kid to progress, you know? And then they have this verbal fight about, I think we need to do this with the kid. And after that, everybody has to shake hands and say, yes, you are talking and you are saying this because you are a professional and have a big heart for children. And we have to talk about children up, not until fighting, but, you know, put in the extra effort to really find out what we need to do.
So those 4 or 5 coaches, they're responsible. They know all of the like 60, 70 students that each other have.
Yeah. But these kids, they think that only one of them is their coach. One is the first go-to guy, you know, and the other are the backups, you know. But as soon as the kids leave the school, these 4 people are talking about how is it with your students? What's your student doing? What's his student? What is this student doing? Why is he doing this? What point do you want to make with this student? And is that the correct thing? Or do we need to go another way with this student?
Okay. Their communication, like their like collaboration, does it happen like every day or is it like weekly or?
My staff gets into the building at 8 in the morning. They spend an hour amongst each other talking about the progress of students, talking about their own professional progress. And after 3 o'clock, they also have an hour and a half to do that. And they do that every day. So every day they are talking about the progress of children or their personal progress. And of course, we also have to organize stuff together. Like a date for primary children to come and visit, or the end of the school year, or stuff like that. But there is no staff that leaves before. In a lot of schools, you see the children walk out and the staff also walks out. We don't do that. You stay here, stick with your team, ask what your co-workers need.
I see. And if we just like come back a little bit just for this question about rubrics, like I'm still kind of wanting to know, like, ultimately, do you want to get rid of rubrics or do you want to like kind of adjust them? Like,
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. If I find a better way to put to paper how children are growing, to monitor how children are growing, I would immediately get rid of rubrics. But at the moment, they are good. They are good for us.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And just like the final question is, can you suggest someone that I can talk to, some from other like principals or people who are starting Agora schools? Like,
well, if you want to get connected with that, I can connect you with the how do you call that, the chairman of the Agora Foundation. He's also the guy who started one of the principals who started this school. So and he knows all the other schools, so he can connect with other people as well. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I'm so inspired by this talk. I'm so excited. So many thanks to you, Rob. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, great. I'm just sending you. Yeah, thanks, of course. But I was also sending you a link at the moment. This is a Dutch website, but well, Google Translate translates everything.
Yeah.
And this is the website we just in the spring we started this Agora Foundation, and all the Agora schools are in that foundation. So you can find a lot of information there about Agora in general, but also on the other schools. Yeah. Perfect. Well, it was nice to talk to you. You got my mind running again on certain topics, so I've took some notes as well. Thank you, and have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks a lot.
Bye.